You guys see this Jimmy Dore moment? Jimmy Dore says NATO provoked Russia's invasion of Ukraine and compares it to a hypothetical situation where Russia bombs Toronto or Toronto bombs American speakers in Toronto. American speakers? What is an American speaker? And builds military bases in Canada.
Which is true. NATO provoked. What NATO did was the equivalent of if Russia started bombing Toronto, or if Toronto started bombing all the American speakers in Toronto, and then they wanted to put military bases in Canada too, that we wouldn't stand for it.
What? I don't even... Okay, so the obvious thing to critique here is like, what's an American speaker? I don't know what that is. I assume he means English speaker, right? But NATO didn't... Russia bombed Ukraine. Russia was the one that bombed Ukraine. Russia invaded Crimea and invaded the Donbass, and then fighting ensued. Nobody likes to talk about the fighting and the taking over of buildings, the seizing of buildings, and they were shelling on both sides. So what it would really be like is if, say...
A curd is a curd.
Dank Prole has donated $20.
Hey!
Fuck Jimmy Dore.
Thank you so much for the the $20, Dank Prole. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Biggest donor of the night. Really, really raking it in. 20 buccarinos. Thank you. I'm trying to think of a better compare. He butchered it so much. But Russia was the one who did the bomb. It would be as if, I don't know, Russia... There's not even like a comparison here. There's no comparison to be made. This is just so far off. The Russians invaded Ukraine, then fighting ensued. Both sides shelled each other because it was a war, and that's how wars work. And then when you invade a country, they're gonna shell you. That's how that works. And I mean, everybody out there were Russian speakers. Like in Eastern Ukraine, the vast majority of people are Russian speakers. So the Russian speakers bombed the Russian speakers. So I don't even know why he's bringing up American speakers. When I met all the soldiers in Eastern Ukraine, during my first deployment in this country, the first time I ever went to the front line, everybody on the front line was speaking Russian. Not a single one spoke Ukrainian. And they had no interest in being part of the Russian Federation. And so if you look at the fighting back in 2014, a lot of the people that were doing the shelling on the separatist positions, they were Russian speakers. So this would be American speakers bombing American speakers. So it's almost as if there's another element to it outside of the language they speak that is causing the violence to occur, like a foreign invasion.
We wouldn't let Russia or China or anybody do that. Look what John F. Kennedy did when Russia was sending missiles to Cuba. He almost started World War III over it. He was willing to start a nuclear war to stop that.
And the right decision was not for America to invade Cuba like Curtis LeMay tried to make us do, that insane maniac. In this instance, Curtis LeMay convinced Putin's leadership to do it, and they actually went through with it. So, I mean, we didn't invade Cuba. This would be like us invading Venezuela right now or invading Cuba right now. We shouldn't do it for good reason.
So we've been doing that. We've encircled Russia with military bases and NATO countries that are sworn enemies of Russia. Russia is no longer an empire like they were. There's no Soviet Union.
They are trying to actively build an empire by invading Ukraine. They already did this in Georgia. It feels like Jimmy Dore just doesn't know anything about Russian history, and he gets everything he knows about Russian history through the people around him, and the people around him are like people from Gray Zone, like Max Blumenthal, gonna be like, you know, someone like Ben Norton, these types. And so he's never gonna, you know, spend time to be like, oh, wait, what about the Russian invasion of Georgia, where they, you know, took Abkhazia and South Ossetia? That building empire? What about the invasion of Chechnya? The two invasions of Chechnya? What about the bombing of hospitals in Syria? Would you call that imperialist war? I know that Jimmy Dore thinks our involvement in Syria was imperialist war. Was Russia's bombing of Syria imperialism?
There's no point to NATO anymore. NATO is an offensive or
Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, clearest examples of the countries that require NATO to survive. The Russian state was open that they don't believe these nation states, if they exist and oppose the Russians in any way, they don't believe that they have a right to sovereignty. Their sovereignty was a gift to them by the Russians. It wasn't that the Estonians, Latvians, Lithuanians had a protest movement and linked arms and were able to gain their own freedom. No, no, no. The Russians were gracious, just fantastic people and gave their freedom. Liberation is given, apparently, not taken. I thought the phrase goes in the other way. But these are nation states that need NATO for a reason. If anything, the Russian invasion of Ukraine has proven why NATO is still needed. I wish NATO wasn't necessary, but defensive alliances, definitely one as large and as powerful as NATO, has stopped nation states from joining NATO from being invaded. Name the nation state that has joined NATO that has been invaded by the Russians after joining NATO. You can't, because none of them have been. And the nation states that haven't joined NATO, like Ukraine, did get invaded.
Organization that invades other countries and steals their natural resources, like we're doing in Syria right now.
Russia invaded Ukraine and then stole its natural resources. It's doing that right now. And also, he's saying we're doing that in Syria right now. Does he not know about what the Wagner Group does in Syria? By the way, when he says we stole its natural resources, I want to hear what he means by that. Because as far as I know, it's like SDF negotiated contracts, but whatever. But the Wagner Group in Syria, and I love in one hand, he's like, where's Russia's empire? And then he brings up Syria. Not only did the Russian government, against the will of the Syrian people, prop up the Assad regime, but the Russian government also had with the Assad regime an arrangement where if the Wagner Group captures an oil location, like let's say an oil rig, they get 25% of the revenues of that. 25%. And they're doing this through shell companies in Syria. They do similar stuff with gold mines in Sudan and with through the relationship with the RSF, the Rapid Support Forces, which is just a rebranded Janjaweed. And they are doing something similar in the Central African Republic. They're probably going to do something in the near future in Mali of a similar style. So I don't know if he thinks that imperialism or not, but most scholars would say it is.
Now, he never brings up Syria. He never brings up Libya.
Libya is another example of Russian imperialism, actually. The Russians are trying to support Khalifa Haftar, the warlord. I mean, that not... Like, America and Russia have engaged in imperialism. It's just Jimmy Dore refuses to ever acknowledge Russian imperialism. He will only acknowledge American imperialism because his fundamental values...
has donated $20. Thanks, dude. I needed the Friday stream. Take care out there.
Hey, Dropped Out Dev, thank you so much for the $20. I appreciate it. Wow, we're getting some donos from Site Chat today. Site Chat's picking it up. They're smoking Gutter Chat. They're dragging them. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Jimmy Dore's fundamental foreign policy belief is, oh, America? Bad. Bad, bad, bad. America, bad. America did bad. Bad, bad, bad. Not America. Oppose America. Good. Good. Russia, good. That's good. That is his belief. And no matter what the situation is, he's going to find a way to stuff it and fit it into that shape. Even when Russia invades Ukraine on a conquest of national annihilation. And that is what their war is. You listen to the dialogue on Russian state TV. Listen to the old school 2014, 2015 Russian nationalists who were fighting in the Donbass. They're very open about it. A war of national annihilation. That's why they're kidnapping Ukrainian children. They're trying to brainwash them. That's why Putin's signing executive orders that removes the property rights of people who do not accept Russian citizenship, allows them to possibly deport those people from their homes. That's why they're importing people from Russia into occupied territory and having them settle in the homes of people who have fled their onslaught. It is a war of national annihilation. They have denied Ukrainian national identity. Putin goes on state TV with historians who claim Ukraine actually doesn't exist. It isn't a real country. It is a war of national annihilation, and Jimmy Dore has decided to spend his time, instead of fighting against that war of national annihilation, which I know if we did anything like this that was 1/10 of the brutality in like Mexico or any other location, Jimmy Dore would be screaming from the rooftops. Instead, he ignores that and then mentions a bunch of other countries to talk about our imperialism while denying Russian imperialism, even though the countries he mentioned are also examples of Russian imperialism. By the way, Russia abstained on the Libyan intervention. I want to bring that up. They allowed that to happen.
or Afghanistan. So let's watch. Do you want to say something?
But Jimmy,
Oh, you want to talk about imperialism in Afghanistan and the Soviet Union? I just want to do one thing about the Soviet Union. One quick thing. Afghanistan population. Happy we're out of Afghanistan, by the way. One of the best, even though the withdrawal was mismanaged, it was good that we left. Look at this right here. See this little gap in the population of Afghanistan? It starts in 1979 to 1989, and then the population starts to recover. This is the Soviet-Afghan War, where the Soviet Union used a scorched earth policy to just level the country and its population centers, displacing, I think it was like 3 to 5 million people and killing 1 to 2 million people. So it was so bad that you can actively just see the population dip. Our invasion also had war crimes, it had mismanagement, we fostered corruption. There was a lot of issues with our invasion, but between 2001 and the end, we didn't see no population dip, nothing like this. That just shows how unbelievably brutal that war was. Again, another country he's mentioned that we engaged imperialism in, but again, Russia did as well.
isn't it best that we defang Russia militarily because you know they're bad and
They're bad and stuff.
That's why we have to you know how when someone
Yes. I mean, yeah. It'd be cool if they couldn't invade more countries, yeah. And you know, it's not that we're defanging Russia. Russia is defanging itself by repeatedly slamming its face into the wall, which is Ukraine, till its teeth falls out. It's not less we're defanging Russia, and Russia's repeatedly falling on the knife that we handed Ukraine.
one's bad,
Okay.
the best thing you do is to hit them first.
Yes.
First lie and be like, I won't hit you. Then hit them first.
Okay.
And that's not illegal or a crime.
This is Kurt. He's a knuckle-dragging, window-looking moron. We hit them first. They invaded Ukraine after invading Georgia and Chechnya twice. How is that us hitting them first? They invaded after saying they wouldn't multiple times after invading in 2014 as well. And they lied about it and used false flags to launch the war. I think people forget this. People forget this at the start of the Russian invasion. But the Russians were releasing video clips of what were supposedly Ukrainian soldiers that were invading Russia proper in an effort to conquer the country. Ridiculous idea that number one, that the Ukrainians would think that they could conquer Russia, but number two, that they would just so happen to attack them at the exact moment that Russia had all of its military forces built up on the border. It has 1939 Poland vibes. That's exactly what Hitler and his armies claimed. That actually Poland attacked them because they organized a false flag, dressed some Germans in Polish uniform, and then had those people in those Germans in Polish uniform attack the Germans, like fire in the air a little bit, and then they launched the war. And in that footage that they released, it was later geolocated to be an occupied territory, meaning that it was Russian soldiers dressed as Ukrainian soldiers in order to launch a false flag that they could use to justify the war. Just like they also tried to claim with the chemical weapons, the bioweapons, that have still, a year and a half, 2 years into the war, have not manifested because they were never real. Jimmy Dore, very, very bright, brilliant guy over here. Very smart, very smart. I've listened to him talk in person. I've listened to him talk online. No matter where you listen to him, his brain gets no bigger. It gets no more complicated. It's as smooth as ever.